classes, or at least times we can get together and figure out how we can do it. So last month, I hate to kind of bring it up to test your memories, but anybody remember what we talked about last month? It was maybe a different way of looking at aspects of an education. Do we want to report on anything they did differently this month or had an experience this month that was interesting, helpful? Go ahead.
It was interesting because even though like I was looking at what was important, compliance still kind of kept coming in as a mom, because I'm like, well, you need to get good grades, and even if this maybe isn't the most beneficial thing, keep doing it. You know, so it was hard to like break that pattern. So like as a kid, especially with a certain personality, it would be really hard to not be compliant. Yeah. So it was hard just even knowing as an adult to be like, maybe you don't need to be doing this busy work.
So how to find that balance?
Yeah, the balance is hard.
Did you feel like you found it a little bit, or just kind of
Did we find it?
button up against the wall?
You think you did, then you didn't.
Yeah, it was rough though, because I mean, I have the vision of it, but then it's still implementing it, and I don't know, it was tricky for me because I'm also that kind of personality where, well, you gotta have the grades that reflect perfection.
Sure.
So,
Or at least excellence.
yeah, well, that's the thing, we're striving for excellence, but I mean.
Okay. All right, anybody else have an experience that stemmed from, yeah?
I just found myself asking completely different questions. So the questions were extremely beneficial for me just in my process. Instead of, holy cow, did you get your homework done? Are you reading that book? Are you doing the thing? It was like, I'm super stoked. Like, what are you reading about? Like, tell me about it. Tell me the coolest thing. Tell me the biggest highlight. And they're like, oh, you can't believe this. Like, this one's good, Mom. Like, I know you're busy, you got all this stuff. You gotta read this one. Like, this one's amazing. And it kind of shifted the conversation in healthy ways. I was actually super excited about it. So just even asking different questions was really an upgrade for me this last month.
Okay, so the tone of your questions changed.
Yeah.
Nature of that.
Instead, like, what's the value in what you're doing? Share it with me. Share me what you're getting out of it, as opposed to, are you getting the work done?
Okay. That's interesting.
I wasn't here last time, but I do have a daughter that doesn't like math. But I'm trying to teach her that there's an order to solving problems, right? And that we're here to solve problems. And the more problems we can solve, the more value we create. And so I told her math's really good at that, because you have to take something that just looks just problematic, right? You just got to break it down. And there's an order to it, and it leads to a solution that, whether you like it or not, whether that matters or not, I want you to understand how the brain can process a problem. And so she's looking at it way different. I said, listen, probably 90% of this you're realistically not going to use day to day, but you will solve problems every day, and that's much more critical. And so me and my wife are on different pages as far as like the value of grades versus the value of just figuring things out and understanding how it can be applied into life, because she comes from Europe, where it's
Structured.
it's different, and so we're kind of trying to bring that to a place that makes sense for them, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I really don't care about grades. I really don't. I just don't anymore, you know. And I know that's me just being a dad, but I just don't see the value, and I understand why we do it, but
that's part of what we talked about last time.
Hey Ryan,
You're trying to.
we realized that you weren't here last week, or last month.
Was it by the way that I said things?
No. Just trying to make you feel
Just
guilty.
that I told you.
Just trying to make you feel guilty is all.
Yeah, all the guilt. Busted.
Anybody else? Want to share? Super interesting insights, yeah.
I have a daughter who, I think last year her lowest grade was a 98. So I am like almost doing the opposite. It's not because of, she's just that way. And so she was really struggling with language arts and the time she was spending, and she was staying up too late at night. And so I just went in her room and I said, can I just close the book? You got like 100%. Just close it, and so we had this really nice talk about, you know, Christ and perfection and all of those things and just balancing your life, and so it was really nice. So thank you for inspiring that conversation.
Oh, good. I'll pull up a quote that we talked about in class, if I can find it real quickly.
Hey, don't tell my wife we're on different pages.
She's gonna watch the video.
Let's
It's
talk
all,
about that out loud.
Jackson, you edit.
Literally
Just say to the head.
all over YouTube. One of the most watched videos on YouTube. You can't imagine the hits it gets.
Six hits.
Delete her YouTube.
Well, I'm kind of with you on the whole grades thing, because it's like so many kids, their brains work differently now. I mean, not just kids, but it's like, so what all the grades and tests and stuff really do is measure a certain type of child that thinks a certain way, that can toe a certain line. And then the rest of the kids are just, you know, it's like, I've got, you know, one daughter that didn't do particularly well on the ACT, but she's really good in school and stuff. And so I'm thinking, okay, is this a testing thing, or, you know, what is this? Was it just too long for you to be in a chair sitting there for, you know, so how does that measure your intelligence compared to someone else, like, who can sit still and can maintain attention for a 3-hour whatever test? So it's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah, I think the structure of grading is, it's almost.
yeah, I don't think it measures accurately.
I always tell my kids, growing up, I have a report card and I kept it. I had a 4.0 and I had 6 U's. I was proud of that. Do you remember U's?
Yeah.
Those, yeah, like, I was like, you know what, you can fake it. You can get through this garbage. You can do it. And you cannot learn anything and you can have bad behavior, but at the end of the day, like, what are you gonna take into the next episode of your life? You know,
Yeah.
so we're really talking about the next episodes of what they're gonna take, so. That's tough though. It's a transition right now. It's kind of grades. We all grew up in the grade era, right?
Yeah.
It's all have grades, right?
Mhm.
ACT score and all that.
Yeah.
It's changing.
I don't even like grades, but I still find myself like, oh, look at this grade, we might need to do something. So I have to
It's
retrain my brain.
It's
I have
ingrained in
to,
me
yeah.
too. I look at it and
I know.
and I want to resist,
Yeah.
you know, I want to focus more on just growth and,
Yeah,
you know, timing, like you say, like it's better curriculum over, like how did you say it? Curriculum over timing over curriculum. Anyway, it's hard to figure it all out.
So we had a discussion in class this past week where I had a couple of quotes I shared. This is part of one. This is from Ezra Taft Benson, and we were talking about the Constitutional Convention. So when those men got together in Philadelphia in the summer, and for weeks in that hot summer, they had to debate and wrestle and get mad at each other and threaten I'll go home multiple times, because there were very key pieces that they just couldn't find agreement on.
They had to shut down the government.
That's what I was thinking. I was thinking they didn't have a government much to shut down back then, but
They would've.
So one of them was the big states versus the small states. Right? The big states thought, we have more people, so any laws that get passed are gonna affect us more, so we should have, more representation. And the small state says, yeah, no way, we're not doing that. We should all have equal representation. And that was, it took 6, 7, 8 weeks to really come to a compromise on just that one issue. And then you have slavery, right, which is maybe even harder to try to figure out. And so I asked him about this quote, because, as Taft Benson said, I testify that the God of heaven raised up choice spirits to lay the foundation of this government. And I asked him about choice spirits. How can you claim they were choice spirits when they argued so bitterly over some of these fundamental pieces or elements of how their government should fit? And it was, led to an interesting conversation. Most of them kind of came to the conclusion that, well, choice spirits doesn't mean perfect, and they all recognize that God uses imperfect people to help further his work, which I'm really grateful for, right? Yeah.
So I've been thinking about this a little bit lately, but I think a lot of times we confuse the fruits of the Spirit and peacemaking with conflict avoidance. Like sometimes you will not make peace by just rolling over and avoiding the fight.
Right.
Because the issues persist, the injustices persist, the problems persist, unless they're confronted. There's no peace when someone's just like, it's not really peace if someone's just like, well, I guess I'll just take it and continuously get beat down and abused. So a lot of times I think there is a benefit to like choosing your battles for sure, and that is part of peacemaking, but sometimes, setting up a national government for the next who knows how long, that's big stakes, and you don't just roll over and go, oh, well, you know.
So it was interesting to see how they, at times, were tempted with this black and white world, right? It's all or nothing. I cannot compromise from this principle. It means so much to me. But then when they got to where they were just about to dissolve, then they thought, well, maybe there's some compromise, but in the bigger picture can get us at least a step in the right direction, even though it's not the mile that I want us to get to. And so, I'm thinking about you and your wife have maybe different perspectives, but like the founders, you come together, talk it through and figure out what's the best next step for us, right? Even if it might not be all or nothing, like, I just want to ignore grades and be done with it.
Did you just tell us to fight?
Just tell us.
He said don't roll over.
Spaniard, man.
I know.
Yeah, we gotta watch out.
Good luck, Granny. Good luck.
Where does passion play into all this?
But I think it's an important principle to think about, building a home filled with the spirit of learning isn't my idea all the time, it isn't her idea all the time. And it isn't our idea against the world. Like it's really hard to just isolate ourselves and think all or nothing. And so we figure out how to live in this world that maybe isn't the ideal for us, but still find value in how we can make it part of the experience that we're trying to have for our children. So those are some thoughts that I've been having since we met last week. I sometimes, when I show the contrast, I tend to leave the impression like one of those isn't worth our time. And that isn't necessarily the case, not the message I'm trying to leave. So this month, I want to show this graphic here to start. Okay, this is so a Canadian writer named Malcolm Gladwell was at a Canadian hockey tournament. It was All-Stars. He and his wife were there, and they were looking through the roster. His wife was waiting for the match to start, and she was looking through the roster, and she said, "This is really interesting. Why is this the case?" Because they listed all the birth dates for all the players. She said, "Why are so many of them born in January and February, like the first of the year? You would think it would be evenly distributed." And so Malcolm was thinking about that for a long time. He's a detective kind of person, right? And he writes books about things that he finds out. So he wanted to try to sort that out. It's kind of interesting because the US is sort of similar. Back that same year, 2021, it's really biased to the beginning of the year. Why is that? You read the book?
Because normally you take the whole year, right? Like if you're born in that year, then if you're 10 years old and you turn 10 in January, and then you're playing against people who don't turn 10 until December,
Yeah.
You're a year older.
Yeah.
You have more opportunities.
That's exactly right. This is the cutoff. So January 1 in Canada was the cutoff. So if you were January 1, January 2, you were the oldest of that group. And if you were December 25th, 26th, you were youngest. And at that age group, right, and that's actually, you stay with that age group growing up. So those that were just a little, like, they had a year's advance.
Which is
and
big
just-
when you're young, right?
When you're 6, that's 20%, when you're 12, that's 10% advantage, right? So he realized that just that cutoff helped those, it advantaged those who were in January, February. And if you weren't there, then your chances of being an all-star in Canada hockey was, tough luck, right? Just because we arbitrarily picked that one cutoff. Let's draw a graph here. This is going to be 0, 8, 12, adult. So years of age. On this side, we're gonna see how much outside control is really needed in a person's life. And as they age, ideally we're transitioning to self-control. And that's gonna look something like this, right? So you start out at 0, you're basically fully dependent on somebody else to keep you alive. But as you get older, then you should be transitioning to more and more self-control. Right? Make sense? So there's something really interesting that happens at 8 and 12 physiologically. It causes us to shift our focus. So here we are highly person oriented, right? It's all about mom or dad or a sibling. Very much oriented around that person. What that person says, we accept and we do. Most of the time, unless you're 2, then it changes, right? So, but around age 8, we start to shift to a rule oriented perspective. That's not fair. He cheated. You start to see or hear more of that argument. And eventually we want to get to a place where we are principle oriented. Rules work, but sometimes the situation causes us to think about how those rules should be applied, and they might be applied differently. Right? So when you're a baby, you don't really care that your mom's dressed in sloppy clothes and her hair's all messy, right? You don't care because it's mom. You don't even notice. And then when you're 8, you start to realize, oh, girls wear dresses, boys don't. That's like a rule, right? And then when you're here, and your wife asks, does this dress make me look fat? And you realize that rules don't apply anymore. There are important principles that need to be appropriately applied, right?
Depending on how long you want to live.
More scenery.
And you answer, the dress has nothing to do with
You're getting me ice cream on the way home.
it.
So, what we want to focus on tonight is, this is a guideline, and there's so much variability, right? It could be, one of them was born in January, one was born in December, but when they're in the same class in school or somewhere else, and they're grouped by age, there's going to be a lot of variability. And that variability matters. So if you're here and someone's introducing math, as an example, and your brain just hasn't hit that developmental space to really even think that way or comprehend. If you happen to be good at memorizing, you'll probably get through it okay. If not, you'll probably hate math forever, right? And if it could have been introduced maybe here, you could have been the next math genius. A couple of months, maybe a year, if someone could have known and paid attention to when to start introducing certain things, it can make a totally different outcome in how they think about themselves, how they think about their education, what they're excited about doing, what they're not excited about doing, right? So one of the models that I really like is called the phases of learning. And what I was taught is this is a really important time to build the core foundation for a child. Right and wrong are really important lessons. Play and work are really important lessons. Right? Love is a really important lesson. And then they hit 8, and all of a sudden, they start to be more and more curious. And if you can lead them into a phase called love of learning, learning becomes really, really exciting for them. Because they're like a little butterfly going from flower to flower, right? And they're kind of all over the place. And if you can just support that, they realize that being curious is really fun, learning is fun, and I can learn from a lot of different things, including books or flowers or paintings or anything, right? Then, their brain physically goes through a process during puberty that allows them to be capable of becoming more and more serious at learning. They can start to study things that maybe aren't as fun, but they learn how to do that and still get value from it. And let me see if I want to pass this out. Trying to brainstorm different ways to see this because this makes a lot of sense, and I like to think in analogies. So here's a variety of ways of thinking about these phases.
Just make it fun that you
I have
I'm
kids
holding
in
it so
school
you
that
can
do
read
that too. So scan through those, there's 5 options, and just read what those different analogies are, and think about which one really sings to you or maybe resonates with you a little bit more than the other ones, and share. So we'll give you a couple minutes to do that. All right, who's got a favorite? Wants to share? Which one is it and why? Good.
I like number 1 and number 3, but I'm gonna go with number 1.
Okay.
And I just feel like that's what has worked for my son. It's what we've done. I don't know. I'm beginning to see the fruit of the core and the learning, love of learning. So,
Can you think of an example? Can you point something out with him?
with him, I feel like trying to piece it together in my mind. I would say, because I grew up with this, and so the love of learning phase, teaching him right and wrong in the core phase, but the love of learning phase was magical for him. And I'm thankful that I had that as a background, because now where he is, he's finding joy in everything. And so it's ripening into a disciplined study that he's doing on his own. I don't know, is that an example?
Yeah, so he's holding me accountable in class too, by the way.
Is he?
Yeah, so we had a reading in class that was about emotions and feelings versus disciplining your mind, right? And so we had a discussion about that, and we ran out of time, so and they kept asking me, what do you think, Mr. Malmstrom? What's the answer? Well, I'll tell you next time. So he kept asking me, so what do you think, Mr. Malmstrom? And then he texted me, I'm still waiting for your answer.
Yes, and I knew what you're talking about now, because he told me today he still doesn't know your answer. So, yeah, but, yeah.
He knows my answer.
Okay.
They just asked, well, I shouldn't say that, I'll get in trouble, but. I'll talk to him, maybe I'll be more direct. All right. Who else? Which one did you like, the analogy?
I like 5 for where I'm at with one of my daughters. And just in general, I think it's, man, as they age, and you don't want to feel like you missed the opportunity to teach character.
Yeah.
But they're exposed to more different types of people, you know, as they age, and being here has been really good for them. That helps them build character and connection and confidence.
Mm-hmm.
She's got the curiosity and the creativity, now it's just the discipline.
Okay.
And so, when she can get, you know, people that are super creative sometimes lack in, like, the discipline or organization side of things, right? And that's the downfall of some of these great minds. And, really just trying to help her get that figured out and understand the importance of that, even though that's not a natural skill set and that's not something that she's inclined to do, but it's critical to her success. So, and she'll find, and as it says here on the page, you'll find peace in the process. There's peace in discipline, even though it's not what you always want to do, right? So for me, that resonates right now.
That's great. It's interesting that one is less, well, I shouldn't say that. It's the elevator, so maybe going up and you see the progression as you go from story to story, kind of thing, right?
Yeah. A lot of ups and downs.
Who else wants to share? Yeah.
I like number 3. I think that this line upon line building on a foundation is how I've always envisioned these phases, that you never leave core phase, you never leave love of learning, you don't leave scholar, you're building on top of something that's your foundation and you're just building upon it, becomes who you are. The other thing I thought was really cool in that one was just the word purpose in scholar phase, because scholar phase is one that I've grappled with over the years. I have 5 kids and they're so dramatically different, and some of them I'm like, yeah, scholar, whatever, you know, like, that's not 12, yeah, that's hilarious, right? That's so funny. But I think it's so intriguing that the word kindles purpose, because in every one of them, regardless of age, those ages don't really compute in my real life, but when they have a purpose, all of a sudden, nothing can stop them. They can do anything when they have a purpose. So that was why that was my favorite. That really resonated.
these are arranged. too,
Yeah.
right?
Thank you for that one. That one was really important.
Yeah,
I like number 4 because I'm always telling myself, don't hurry, like I have to remind myself, don't hurry up, you know what I mean? And then I also feel like, I have to defend my kids to allow them to grow in their season. Because I feel like the world is saying, hurry up, and telling them they need to be here and there, and doing this and that. And I find myself having to defend my kids for where they are, do you know what I mean? And not pushing them out of where they are and letting them get to where they're going. Does that make sense?
yeah, so honoring the phase.
Yeah.
So the word that I'm trying to bring in here is, there is a peace with that. We're not in a hurry to get them grown up faster than they should be, and we're not stressed that they're not growing as fast as we thought they should be, what we expect, right? When we learn to honor their phase, there is a peace and a trust in the process that can really bring some less stress in our lives, right? Where is it coming from? Like the pressures primarily?
I think I compare myself and I compare my kids to other kids a lot. That's where I find myself. Like, it's really easy to look at my 8-year-old has a friend who was born 2 weeks earlier than her. My 8-year-old's in 2nd grade, her friend is in 3rd grade. My daughter is like, she still wants to be just a little girl. Like, she just wants to play outside and pet the cat and feed the chickens. And then her, and then, yeah, right? And then her friend is like my daughter doesn't have great handwriting. And kindergarten was a struggle to get her to read, and now she reads all the time. Now we're working on math and trying to get her up to snuff, but her friend's handwriting is perfect, and my daughter's sort of like, but I have to stop myself from comparing them in my mind, because I'm looking at them and I just think, my little girl is so happy where she is. Why would I push her out of that? You know what I mean?
I do, so how do you find the balance to know when it's time to stretch a little bit?
I think I feel like she told me. I feel like she letting her sort of, obviously you wanna push them a little bit and shape and mold them, but I feel like I wasn't gonna get her there until she was ready to get there. Do you know what I mean? And I feel like that's true with all of my kids.
She's also just learning, she's very, self-critical. She doesn't get it right the first time, so we had to be really gentle with her. But we also had to know, okay, it's time, you should probably start reading. So we had to starting to push a little bit. But I was really grateful she had that extra year of just being her whimsical self, because she is a real dreamy, romantic girl that just loves.
Does it sound familiar, like her older sister?
Yeah.
Maybe a little?
Yeah. For sure.
But she'll pray for the animals all the time, outside. She's really worried about the animals outside all the time. Do you know what I mean? Just she just wants to be a little girl, and I feel like I've had the opportunity to keep I heard this quote once from a general, a member of the primary presidency, is children come, our job is just to defend what children came with. Does that make sense? So they're born with these amazing things inside of them, and our job is to defend that. And so I don't want to mush her whimsy and I don't know.
Shove her down.
Yeah, I don't want to make her into the rest of the kids. I don't think she'll ever be she's never gonna be like her friend who's 2 weeks different in age. They just are different people and they have different interests and they're super different. They love each other, but it's so easy to feel like, well, my kid should be more like that. She should be closer to where this other person is. It's the January thing,
Yeah, we had 2 girls to start with, and both of them took up reading fairly early, and just process. My son, total different story. He was the third, and you know, had I not had this model in my mind, I really would have been panicking. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, right? But I just trusted that that would be coming. Hey guys.
Hi.
Thanks for coming. Okay, anybody else want to share one last one? You got a smile on your face, I want to hear yours.
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm just thinking about how your daughter and my daughter would be really good friends. She was telling me my daughter's, you know, kind of, and I was also thinking while you were talking that I'm just grateful for Heavenly Father, you know, because my daughter, she's in 6th grade right now, and kind of did something a little different with her schooling, but it all just kind of happened, and we found it because of Heavenly Father. I wasn't looking for it for her, but we found a school setting for her that's just wonderful, where she, you know, when I was kind of deciding between 2 different schools right at the end, and it was and just leaned on this one because they were younger, because it only she's always trying to push herself to be like, she's my youngest, so she has all her 3 older siblings, so she's always trying to, you know, like, okay, it's time for me to wear the makeup now, and it's time for me to do this, but inside she's that little girl, you know, and so I'm just trying to hold on to that as much as possible with her. But I'm just grateful for Heavenly Father for, you know, his help in helping them get to situations where they can kind of grow. I mean, like she's in a little school right now that's really cute. It only goes up to 6th grade. And so she's one of the oldest, but some of her really good friends are the 4th graders, and so she's not around the older ones that she has to feel pressure to be like the teenagers and stuff. It's like, no, you stay, and you just preserve what's there. But it reminded me of, sorry, I'm probably talking too long, but it reminded me of the chicken story, because we got chickens this year, and she was telling me today, Mom, I went out to the chickens and it was jumping on my back and playing with my hair and all this stuff. And so, yeah, just kind of trying to preserve that, where they're at, what's bringing them joy, not letting that grow a little bit longer before the world squelches. So.
Letting them build that foundation like Jackie was saying, like, they have to build that really sturdy foundation, and then they can build on top of that, and that might take longer for some kids than other kids, right?
Yes.
It looks different.
It does look different.
Yeah.
Okay. So what I want to do is share the contrast now. So we talked about earlier on being careful of black and white thinking, but I do want to show the contrast to see what happens if this is not honored. We generally end up with this, right? A hate of learning, or not seeing a purpose. I don't understand why I have to be here. Feeling like I'm compelled. So we want to contrast what's called the Prussian model of education, which is what's widely adopted almost everywhere, right? Again, less important to criticize that one as to compare it, so we can see what's happening in both sides. So, core philosophy, this phases of learning model, education unfolds naturally through divine designed seasons of development. Whereas the other aspects, the core philosophy is education is engineered to produce obedient, efficient workers and soldiers. Because of where it came from, which is Prussia, it was a time when the Germans of the Holy Roman Empire had fallen, and Germany was, that area was one of the darkest times in their history. And to come out of that, they created this new model that created obedient soldiers and obedient citizens, and it flourished and did really well and was adopted throughout much of the world. All right, so the purpose of education And this model is to awaken genius, cultivate character, prepare self-governing leaders. And the other one is to produce compliant citizens who follow orders and fill assigned roles. View of the child. Each child is unique with an internal timetable for growth, or each child is a unit to be standardized and measured. So a lot of measurement, a lot of standardization, thoughts or reactions when you read this. What happens when you see this contrast?
Yeah.
Make you mad? Okay.
Get frustrated a little bit because it's, you understand there's a time and a season maybe for some of these, but overall for the value of someone's entire life, this Russian model,
Prussian.
Prussian,
Yeah.
like I said, it's not the freedom that our spirits want.
Okay.
Maybe
Yeah,
it
you
is
have
for
kind of a
some.
scowl on your face too. What's going on here?
I have a lot of thoughts. I think, obviously, the phases of learning, what does TJN mean?
Thomas Jefferson
Education, okay, I read that book but a long time ago, okay. The Prussian model, I was actually thinking about church, and I hope it's okay to bring this up in here, but I was thinking about the piece of like being a compliant citizen, not to follow any orders, but to fill your assigned roles that, God wants you to fill. So I just had this moment of like kind of dancing back and forth actually between them, surprisingly. And just that like, sometimes with what's going on in the world right now, individualism is taken to a whole other level.
Right. So I love that thinking, right? It's not black and white.
Mhm.
It's seeing, I read that and what's wrong with obedience? Like that's a really important lesson to learn, right? And sometimes just understanding what your role is and fulfilling that to the best, that's a really important skill to have. So what happens if that becomes the primary goal? Maybe that's where the itch is, right? Have a comment?
One of the things that, I think, like Connor Boyack, he talks about this a lot, about how, that our education, it's obedience to the state, where reality you should be, your number one priority to be obedient to God. Like, that should be, and then, you owe it to your family, and then, it goes on after that, but.
Yeah, so if the education is coming from the state, it makes complete sense that they would want some loyalty to them, right? That's the whole purpose or the big purpose of creating that model, right? Having more and more people follow.
So, I would have to think that the culture and nature of that regional people, that Germanic people, inform that model. And maybe that model works better for them. Maybe the bias towards rigidity and conformity works better there than like something that Thomas Jefferson would come out of more of an Anglo culture and people probably wouldn't work as well. Because I definitely some of my kids would freak out in that, like Samuel would have just been crushed in 12 and 13. It would have been a nightmare. He hated school enough, and we were pretty understanding of his struggles. And if he had been a very rigid thing where it was like very disciplinary, you fail and you're awful because you didn't measure up, it was really hard.
Yeah.
But I kind of think there's some element of cultural adaptation.
I like that too, because some people thrive in structure too.
Yeah.
Right? That works really well at a certain time, in certain conditions. And maybe just exactly what they need. We just need to have some structure. Every day it looks this way, and that creates some order, which then they can build on.
Sorry, I'm talking a lot. Going back to what Marissa was kind of saying, she was talking about how fulfilling our roles and like kind of coloring inside the lines a little bit, I heard this thing a long time ago, probably gonna get the details wrong, But Orson Scott Card was talking about how he was in high school and he wanted to write all this like free form poetry and like just really angsty stuff, and his English teacher said, no, you write 100 sonnets and then come back to me and we'll talk. And he said that working within that really strict structure made him such a better writer.
Mhm.
Because he's like, you could just sort of like vomit out words when you're doing like free form poetry, right? And it's just very angsty, but he had to sit there and do I am a pentameter and all that stuff that made it, you know, he had to really work at it and be creative within the structure.
Mhm.
So I kind of think you're right, where you can fulfill your role and do things that are really great within that structure. Does that
And
make sense?
I think what this model is saying, you know, when you're here and you have all this,
Yeah,
it's a really great time to
Yeah.
accept some structure, right?
yeah.
Just sit down and do what your mentor tells you. Right? Because you've had all this freedom, now you need to figure out how to follow the rules much better, and be able to create within those laws, which is where the real creativity comes.
So maybe they complement each other, it's kind of a timing thing, right?
I think that's the key, right? It's timing, and each one of our kids are gonna be on their own timeline.
Cause I get frustrated with the Prussian model as an entrepreneur, right?
Uh-huh.
But I'm so grateful for it because my operators,
Right.
that's how they are, I mean, they are,
Right.
that's how they're made, and I love it, and it allows me to do other things and be other things. But they thrive in that, so I think I'm grateful for it, but at the same time, the dark side of it, I guess, kinda gets me, right? And like, as a kid, I was like, man, that was too soon, this model was too soon for me.
So it totally makes sense why the elites would want to import that, right? Because it's great for them.
How do you scale?
That's how you scale.
They wanted little operators.
They want a massively scaled thing that they control, and that requires rigid structures.
Yeah, so I'm definitely grateful for some of it, some took job.
All right, so hopefully that helps. Again, it really isn't black and white, it's timing in a lot of cases. And if you can have this, and then have the structure, just think about the lessons that you can learn, and in a healthy way. If you have structure here, this is where you get to pretty quickly, right? It's just wrong timing. All right.
I also think, remember, when they started cutting down on the amount of recess and free play for kids at that exact age.
Yeah.
That's a nightmare. I remember just aching for that recess time at that age. Like watching the clock and like, this isn't even move. And so I can imagine being cut down to like one recess.
They've done that, have they taken down recess?
Oh, yeah,
Have they
a
really?
lot, yeah, a lot.
You get 20 minutes.
That's already bad.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
No, I'm not paying attention to that. Now I need more. No, I haven't.
Let's just read the
You get
motivation.
a 20-minute or we
Read the
can-
motivation together, and then I'll let you guys finish this on your own. So, motivation, on one side, we're looking for curiosity, inspiration, moral development, love of truth. On the other side, if you get it out of order, you motivate by fear, reward, punishment, external validation. And so now all of a sudden, your personal worth gets tied to your performance. Or because you have so many adults in your life judging your performance, and you feel good or bad about yourself depending on how well you do. Instead of really just looking for the genius and being curious. I can keep going, but I'll leave that for a little bit. Any other comments or questions? Disagreements? I like disagreements actually. It's about time.
Do you
For
know,
you.
are you gonna let me? Okay. No, I just keep on thinking, this is like, these two methods, this is like the best case ever for homeschooling. But what happens if at some point you feel like your student needs like an organized environment where you wanna be in a classroom setting with mentors and peers, and then how do you make all of this reconcile together? Because all of this is the most beautiful case for homeschooling I've ever seen in my life. Because that can be literally personalized and tailored to that student, exactly as that student needs it. And then you say,
There's 16
we want to be
kids.
in a school together in a classroom. We're going to do these inspired assignments together. Decide if you want to do it or not. Decide if you want to show up to class or not. Decide if you want to, like, you know, maybe you're still back in core phase. So maybe you just want to hang out in the hall and, you know, you can scrub the walls with us. Like, okay. Do you hear what I'm saying? Like, this is a great case for homeschooling. So how do you take all of this? I mean, this is
And-
obviously
and
the
this is
this is the
awesome
biggest
when
question of a sin.
You don't have to work, and you don't have a lot of kids, and
You don't.
you don't feel sick ever, right?
Yeah.
It's just, life would be just great.
It'd be amazing.
That's how it
be
works, right?
amazing. But the whole question I have, and obviously it's the biggest question we all have, is how do you reconcile these together in an organized classroom together and have students thrive, knowing that you're going to have students on that entire spectrum in one class. You're going to have them all there. You're going to have some that never had a love of learning, that actually literally started with a hate of learning, and they're going to be in your class, and now they're supposed to be right into scholar phase, right? And so how do you reconcile that in a classroom environment? That's my biggest question. I think it's all of our biggest questions. I think it's why we all landed here. It's because we're trying to figure it out. We're trying to answer those questions. But
I have a thought, just having been a crazy lady and gone to a lot of different schools, and I think that part of it, the challenge, also having been a teacher, is having one teacher and a classroom of kids, and that just in life in general, we've lost so much of our community and our ability to share our different strengths and talents, and that, like, if your child and, you know, and I had things that I would be the strongest person to teach them, that I would do those things with them, and then we could just shift, and you would take my child, and we would do that. We went to a school in northern Idaho that was small enough, and they had enough teachers that it was very flexible. And so it would be like, if this student, and I was in like 1st through 4th grade, but they could make those types of shifts. There were not really grades. It was Waldorf based, so it was just kind of open. They didn't really call them grades or anything, and everybody just kind of would bob and weave depending on what they needed. So it was really beautiful. So.
You had a comment?
Oh, I was just gonna say, when you say that, oh yeah, that's great for homeschool, I mean, I tried this homeschooling, TJ Ed, everything, and I felt like I was like failing at it, so even that aside, I think a lot of this is about changing our expectations, maybe, for what we look at for our kids, is setting up the environment for these things, and then, for me anyway, I've had to try to change my expectations and focus on creating the environment, but I'm also very curious to hear what you have to say.
And that's like what, in my vast homeschool experience, people talk to me all the time about like gaps in their education and blah, 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 and I'm like, everybody has gaps in their education, everybody. I have like, biology, couldn't even, like, I don't even know if I showed up to that class. So like, everybody has gaps in their education, and I keep telling people, I'm like, my whole goal is to make a love of learning and lifelong learners, so that when they go out in the world and they don't know something, they feel confident that they can go out and figure it out.
And what is a gap in education? Maybe someone didn't need that, like,
Right.
what
Yeah.
does that mean?
And so I'm like, and then like my math, I'm like, I didn't get very far in math in high school, and I'm like, I have never needed that. You know what I mean? So that's a gap that didn't need to be filled, I guess, but like.
and yet, if you needed it now, you would
I
just
could
figure
go
it
out
out.
and figure it
You would
out.
literally figure it
Yeah,
out
you
as
could go
fast
figure
as
it
you
out.
needed to, and
Yeah,
you'd
and
be
that's-
just fine.
Isn't that the goal that we're
Mhm.
all trying to do, is just make our kids, not make our kids, help our kids, create the environment for our kids to have a love of learning and become lifelong learners, and give them the confidence that they can go out there and learn what they need to learn and do what they need to do. Right, honey?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, I was just thinking like, you could have this perfectly ideal scenario if you had infinite resources to perfectly track this child's phase and what they're interested in. And I think we have to have faith that, if you're setting the right environment and the right expectations,
most of the
It's
time,
most of the
as
time,
much as you can.
it's gonna work out most of the time, cause like, I mean, I found what we needed was, it was easy to homeschool when our kid was like, you know, when we had 4 kids, 3 kids, and the oldest one was learning 2nd grade material. That's pretty easy to do. You can get that done in an hour and a half tops and go have fun, but when they got older, we found out we needed help. And so we had to adapt and like change your expectations, like you're saying, it's like, it's not a failure.
Remove
We-
distractions.
We had to struggle a little bit with feeling like we were failing and realizing we weren't. And, it's like my,
And maybe we are, and that's fine.
Find
no,
out
my-
later. We'll all find out later.
My-
When they're all in therapy, give the rest of their lives.
My uncle and aunt were like kind of early homeschoolers, and like my cousins were all homeschooling while I was.
They were the
in
weirdos.
But they had a weird neighborhood up Provo Canyon with a bunch of strange people that, they created a co-op to handle, like you were saying, like, my uncle was awesome at math. He got all the math kids and took them through math, and, you know, they had like someone doing English, someone doing this, and, I didn't get really paid off of them, but they needed help even with, and they were really bought in on it and put a lot of energy into it, so.
So Jackie, I wanna make your question more concrete, right?
Okay, let's go.
Your real question is ascend, because your kids are in ascend, right?
Yeah, right.
How do we honor the phases
Yes.
here?
And be in an organized classroom together with some kind of order and structure.
Hybrid,
And
you want hybrid.
I mean, yeah, well, and I think Ascend already is as much of a hybrid as we can be.
Well, and
We-
find the
we-
balance
that's-
of memorization
really-
and math, yeah, you need to get your math facts done. But memorizing other things like spelling and not having a basis for your phonograms and knowing the rules, kind of to me is a waste of time. I wanna know, I want the line by line. And so, yeah, I see some pros and cons on both sides here, but how do you balance that though?
Well, there's subjects that are more skill-based.
Yes.
There's subjects that are more
Memorizing is good for
core
some
and
things.
heart and soul-based, right? And so balancing all of
Well,
that, which,
I mean, what you're accomplishing in 3 days plus an hour,
yeah,
it's quite a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you're still getting that a lot of time during the week to self-learn and execute on your own.
So my question is, what is the role of the mentor? And what is the role of the classroom? In your kids' education?
specific personally.
Yeah. I'm
Well,
assuming,
the
I
role
mean,
of a mentor is that they can hear things from a mentor that I've said 100 trillion times, but all of a sudden they heard it, and it's a miracle. They come home and tell me stuff that you've said. I'm like, that is the most novel thing I've ever heard in my whole life. I have never said that before. It's so amazing, right?
Okay.
So second witness,
Second
for
witness,
sure.
great.
But another role is accountability. So we homeschooled all of our family growing up, and accountability is a really big question mark. Like, they're like, yeah, mom said to do it. Whatevs. You know what I mean? But when Malmstrom says, here's this assignment, all of a sudden they're like, I'm doing that assignment. They would never do that for me. I could ask and plead and beg, and I could say, hey, this is the best book you've ever read your whole entire life. And they'd be like, yeah. You bring the same book, they're like, I'm reading this book. I'm like, yeah, you are. Okay, it's so great. So that is a completely different experience than what we experienced in homeschool, right? There's this all of a sudden, this second witness, there's this accountability that wasn't possible in the home.
And I also think you get to like hear, like, these are the people we want in front of our kids.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
We share
what
the
about
same.
expertise?
Yeah.
To have an expertise?
Yeah, I was executing in an area that you don't have.
Well, I think that, but I also think character wise.
Yeah,
Like,
for
these
sure.
are the people we want in front of our kids.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you can help them think of their purpose.
Man, I'm starting to wonder where my resume needs to go.
Well, 15 Laws really talks about if you know your why, if you can just keep thinking about your why, it's gonna help you stay motivated, because if you wanna go on a vacation and you wanna look nice in a swimsuit, you're gonna work out really hard for it, that's your why. Now I'm asking my 11-year-old, what's your why? You're 11. He's like, I don't know. I'm like, I know my why. Why do I do the things I do? He's like, well, because of me. I'm like, yeah, you're right. But if you guys can inspire them, and he's 11.
So,
Ashland's inspired. Ashland's,
so
15,
the
almost
question for
16.
him may not be what's your why?
yeah,
Do you think you have a why?
I think he might be a little young.
Well,
Well, yeah, I think the love of learning is where he really still needs to be at.
okay.
What are some
Is
good ones?
this my
Yeah.
complete list? Is this the role of the mentor?
Oh, we could keep on going.
Inspiring.
It's inspiration, it's.
Inspiration.
Mhm. But there is something to be said about, I'll go back to accountability. Accountability, we could expand on that, because there's so many things that they'll do for you that they wouldn't do for me. And that's a beautiful thing. There's nothing wrong with accountability. There's nothing wrong with saying, you know what? I'm gonna do this hard thing. I'm gonna do all these hard things because he asked me, and I'm thankful for that. I will abandon our beautiful little homeschool world that we had that was so magical, and I will come to this organized classroom and this structured environment because of those things.
So, question I have is, 4 years ago I started with him, 5?
Minute.
If I had done last year, my first year with him, what would have happened, do you think?
We would have killed them all off. They'd all be in hate of learning.
That was Ashlyn's first year and she loves it.
Yeah.
So
Well,
she had
it's
you her
because-
first year
well,
and
it's
she
because
loved
she
it.
was ninth grade, so she
True.
developmentally,
True.
it lined up. But if you would have pulled that in 7th grade, yeah, that would have been okay.
Okay, so there's still an element of timing with this, right?
Mhm.
If I teach the same way I teach and I was teaching Mr. E's class, it would work, right? Because they're here, my students are up here a little bit, so there's more I can do as a mentor in that respect. So what happens, do they just not need accountability that way?
I still think accountability is super important.
Or is it flavored differently, right?
Yeah, it would look
'Cause-
different
'cause
for sure.
Grandpa can do that.
Yeah.
I can't.
Yeah.
Uncle can't, maybe, but grandpa could, right? So there's still an element that a mentor with this model in mind can get to know the students well enough to know, you know, this week I just need to hold them accountable and I don't care about their excuses this time, right? They just need to know, they need to be doctor grade. Just, life is like that sometimes. And other times, like this student just had knee surgery, why would I expect them to be able to do a full load? And they're 3 weeks behind, they're freaking out about it, and I expect them to get caught up. It doesn't seem like that's gonna line over, right? So, there's gotta be some adaptability, and there's gotta be enough interaction with a mentor and a student to know and get the inspiration to know when to push, when to not, and when it works, right? And hopefully you get it right enough times that it works, right? Because I see them 3 hours a week, and I'm supposed to figure this out, right? Is this my, I mean, how good can you expect me to be at that? If I see them 3 hours a week?
It's a tall ask.
It's a tall ask,
That's a
right?
really big, tall ask.
So lower your expectations.
I mean, everyone.
Ashlyn's always sharing all the books that you're reading in her class, so I think she's pretty inspired. She's like, you gotta read this, so now I've got like 8 books I'm reading this month. All my kids' books, so.
I think that's a common theme I'm hearing throughout the whole class is change expectations and like be careful of expectations and, you know, be careful of comparing, be careful of, you know, because we can squelch love of learning or we can squelch, you know.
All right,
And we can only do so much and then hopefully God will help with the rest.
so here's my next question. What's the role of the classroom in an education?
Super inspiring when you're with your peers and you see them digging and doing the hard work too. You're like, man, we're all reading this book. This is a hard book. It's a hard read. It's inspiring to see your peers working together like that.
Okay, some positive peer pressure.
Positive.
Some
It's-
examples of same age peers.
That's what you want in a classroom, is
Inspiring.
the kids to be able to build each other up and be supportive and like, instead of making fun of you if you make a mistake, being like, no, you've got this, you can do hard things, and pushing through. That's what you know, that's the goal of what we want. Doesn't mean it always is what happens in the
Okay.
classroom.
All right, Tara?
I'll say one thing I love in the classroom with my students is when those couple come and they are prepared and ready to go, and they just elevate everything. I couldn't do that. It's the students that do that. I try, but when they come prepared and ready, they do something that I don't feel like adults can do.
Yeah.
You know, and I can kind of sense the culture of each classroom through my kids. Like I can kind of feel what culture the classroom or the presenter brings. And so that's really cool to see, and they're very different. They're all very different, how they talk about each class and how they take things in and what they want to do with the information. Because you know, one of my daughters is a class and she hates the subject, but she loves the culture. And so that's been really good, you know, and really interesting to see.
Anything else we should add to the classroom? What's the role? Yeah.
Well, more inspiration. So they're really inspired by some of the things their peers will say. They're like, holy cow, I never thought of that before. I read that book, I didn't hear anything like that ever, you know? So just that collaborative growth that happens, especially if someone that's your peer.
Okay.
Okay, one more. And back, more accountability. There's more accountability too, right? If you're supposed to come for a book discussion, you're supposed to come prepared to read this book, and you're the only one in the class that didn't crack the book open and didn't read, all of a sudden you're like, wow, I can't even participate in this, right?
James, I feel like you're getting like some twists, like what's the role of the classroom? There's gonna be like some major like twist at the end. I'm waiting for it.
Yeah,
Right?
it's coming.
Yeah.
Buckle up.
Setting us up.
My daughter
Six
really
seconds.
appreciates the opportunity to discuss ideas.
Okay, so you need an audience, you need social interaction, right? So discussion is a great place to do that, is in the classroom. I like it.
I think the classroom really helps them understand or start to cultivate an idea of what their strengths are and what their purpose is. Because already, like Hannah last year in 6th grade, it's like, you know, she's like, oh, well, she's really good at that. And not just school stuff, but like, oh, she's really kind when someone's like sad, or she knows how to crack a joke. Like it's just so awesome, the little society that they form so quickly in understanding each other's strengths and weaknesses too, of how to hold, you know, other people up.
Okay, good. All right, so mentors classroom.
That was a twist.
I know.
Yeah.
He's twisting it real good.
So how do you know if that's happening?
In the classroom?
If your mentor is doing this, or if this is happening in the classroom, how do you know?
If your child wants to go to school in the morning, I mean,
Okay.
or not.
When your kid's excited about
If
learning
they like
and
going to school, then
excited
you
about it.
assume there's good things happening, right? Or they could be skipping out and just enjoying their friends out in the parking lot, right, whatever. How do you know if it's working?
It's
Oral
pulling
exams.
something.
When you show up at oral exams, that's how you know if any of
Yeah.
that's happening.
I thought
Twice a
about
year.
that
We're just
too.
holding on until the end of the year.
Oral exams, that's how we know, baby.
It's pulling something out of them that you didn't maybe see before. I don't know. I feel like if both of those are working, then the student themselves is happier. They're becoming something more.
I like it.
They're confident, but they're peaceful, you know, I mean, they kind of like, when I can tell when they're in the right rhythm, because they understand what's going on, they understand what they need to do, and they know why they're doing it.
So have you been thinking about this and like your specific children, where are they? The question, how do you know where they are? Can you tell what the markers are? And what the right questions are to ask, depending on where they are? You want some hints or some ideas?
How do you start over if you jump the gun?
Yeah.
Well, fortunately, they're very resilient. Okay, this is divided by phase. These are some ideas that you can, observe. Look for certain markers. So for core phase, as you observe, what activities make them light up with joy and confidence? Do they seek connection? Do they respond to correction? These are all markers to let you know where they are in their core phase, and maybe some ideas to work on. And reflecting on your role as a parent, what am I modeling for them? Is it calmness, kindness, and consistency? Am I teaching right and wrong through stories and example? Am I inviting them to meaningful family work? What do the rhythms in our home look like? These are all different ways that if they can, they can thrive in core phase if there is some structure, if there's some consistency, if they know what to expect. There's a lot of love, interaction, work, and family and play. All right, jump down to love of learning. How do you know if they're there? Are they curious? Are they exploring? Is there a lot of variety? Is there delight? If those are missing, then you need to figure out a way to go back and renegotiate love of learning with them, right? Even if that means taking a little bit of a break and say, let's take a step back here, right? What topics do they explore spontaneously? Do they? If they don't, it's interesting in my class, so I have base assignments that I give my class, and then there's a section down below. They don't get any credit for it. I don't give extra credit for this, but I just ask them, what classic have you always wanted to read? Why don't you start reading that? And which one is it? Just report back to me, tell me how it is. It's interesting to see which ones are doing that, which ones are not, right? And that gives me a hint about where they are on the scale. So I can maybe come up with some lessons or things that we can do in class that's gonna help reach them here, and others that are gonna help reach them here, right? So it's gathering information and then seeking for inspired direction. All right, I'll let you go through those. On the backside, as they get into this phase, self-directed study. Are they able to sit down on their own and work out their homework, or do they need some over-the-shoulder looking? Purpose, mastery, mentor-guided depth. So there's observations. Is my team asking deeper questions? Do they want time alone to study or create or think? Are they started caring about personal habits? Are the boys showering yet? Goals or mission? Are they dissatisfied with shallow answers? Right? That's Sam for me, right? Have I prayed for discernment? Oh, that's down in your role. Are they showing signs of wanting mentors beyond parents? Okay, so that helps give you an idea of where they are based on observation, and then some questions to ask yourself as you reflect on what your role is in helping them, honoring where they are, and helping them in that phase. So the last section, across all phases, the meta reflection, right? So this is thinking about reflecting. What does peace feel like in our home, and when do we lose it? What shoulds am I carrying that don't align with my child's true growth? So there's expectations there, right? Am I rushing growth because of fear? Where am I still operating on the Prussian model of control rather than mentoring through love and example? How can I strengthen my own learning this week so my children see me growing too? All right, we need to wrap up here. So this month, as you sat here today, is there something that's come to your mind that you think there's something I can do with each of my children to better honor their phase, where they are? Something come to your mind. Write it down, do it, and then report back next month so we can share. For me, the mentor primary goal is to inspire in a classroom where there's inspiration. The studying can't happen here. Right? They need hours at home on their own, studying, to do the learning. This is a different learning. It's not like content learning necessarily, for me in my classroom and the topics that I teach. Any thoughts, comments, questions, complaints?
I have my work cut out.
So why do you say that? You have your work cut out for you.
I just know I need to change my ways of, like,
Well, letting go of expectations
Right.
for letting it be okay to be in a different place. Maybe,
it's not Ashland. Ashland's
yeah. Well, yeah. Girls and boys are different.
So I'm reminded of a story, little boy, multiple times the mom said, don't go out to the corner, don't go out to the corner, don't go out to the corner, it's dangerous, right? One day, he's out at the corner, and his mom picks him up, started yelling at him, I told you never go to the corner. And he replied, Mommy, what's the corner?
Oh.
Mommy, what's the corner? It's kind of like here, right? We're wanting them, expecting them to be somewhere else when they might be here. Or we're trying to keep them here because we don't want them to get here yet. We don't want them to grow up. I don't know. Each one is different. But when we honor the phase where they are, look for the genius that's there, and then seek inspiration to have an environment at home that helps them thrive where they are, and look forward with anticipation to where they're going. Every one of them has an amazing thing to do on this earth while they're here. And if we can create an environment both here that's in partnership with what's going on at home, we should be under your direction. So this should be happening, and you can get some intel through conversations you have with your children, right? And then you figure out on your end how to best support the mentors that, as we're trying to do this, with the 3 hours a week we get with them. Okay. All right, you guys are awesome. Thanks for coming this month.
Yeah.